injectors have been installed. 47-pound injectors here are provided by Ford Performance, and they are the LU47 injector. Injectors are a very important part of your forced induction vehicle and your naturally aspirated vehicle. Forced induction vehicles, it's even more important because, as you know, if you lose fueling while you're in the middle of the heat of battle, you're gonna have a problem. And that's never a good thing. It'll likely result in your engine being blown up, and it'll likely result in very large disappointment, including losing the race. And we're not out here trying to lose the race. So, tuning injectors, there's some things that you want to do. You always want to speak to your tuner first. If you're doing your own tuning like I do here, then hey, no harm, no foul. But if you have a tuner out there, you need to get in touch with your tuner and talk to him about exactly what you want to do, what your goals are, what goals you have in general for the car. And your tuner will more than likely advise you on what they know how to tune and what injectors work best. So there are a few things I go by here. First is base fuel pressure. I run 60 PSI on this vehicle. So bam, the Cobra's got 60 PSI fuel pressure, maybe up to 62. Of course, out here, if you look, there's a port where you can test that at. On newer vehicles, they don't have the Schrader valve. They have a fuel pressure sensor. Now, some do have the Schrader valve. I've seen some that don't. And that's where you get your fuel pressure reference from, so that you know how much fuel pressure the car has. As you can hear, this one's idling perfectly after I went from the 39 to the 47-pound injectors. And there's a good reason for that. Now we'll listen to it all the way around. Just listen to that idle. Perfect idle every single time. You gotta love it. So let's get to the nitty gritty. You've got high slope on your fuel injectors. You've got a low slope in your injector data. You also have something called injector offsets, which is a table of voltages that relate to how those injectors fire at said various voltages. Because your voltage on your car is never at 100% stable state, there are variances based on starting, cranking, driving, low RPM, high RPM. Is the fan running? Is the AC on high or low? You have various loads. So your injectors have to be able to deliver fuel precisely at every single point in time. Now in these tunes, we make changes to the high slope and low slope, as well as the offsets. Mass airflow is something that you shouldn't have to adjust, but it is a method of adjusting fueling. You shouldn't have to adjust those unless you are tuning around a problem, or the scale of the injectors is completely different and you have to scale them in so the ECM can recognize them, because the injectors happen to be too large for the computer to recognize. So there are a few different steps to that. As you can hear, even here, it's in closed loop. So we're running about a 14.1 to 14.7 E10, E0 stoic value. Granted that this is on E85, I do still use the gasoline AFR scale for simplicity of the tuning, the programming, and everything else. The other format that you can do that in is Lambda. So you can hear here, bam. Give it a little rev, AC's on, bam. Comes right back down to idle, no problems. Car is sounding phenomenal. There are no problems with it. So if you're gonna get a precise injector tune, your hardware and the hardware conditions on the vehicle are very important. You have to know your fuel pressure. You have to know what kind of injector you're using. You have to know the data for that injector. Now, there are ways of finding data for the injectors when that data is not available, but that makes the process a lot harder, and we want to work smart, not hard. You don't have to invent injector values to prove that you know what you're doing. If you have a table of known values, go with that table of known values and send it. Let's hop in. Got that AC running in here because it is getting hot out in this place. Look at that. Perfect 14, 15, just closed loop, working just as good as can be. Turn this bad boy down a little bit. If I give her a little rev, everything sounds perfect. You can even see the vacuum here running great. About 20 HG on the vacuum. If I give her a little bit of a rev, hey, revs every time with no problem. car is running beautifully. Everything is running how it's supposed to. This is paramount to making sure that the car is tuned properly. If the car is not tuned properly, you're gonna always have issues with idle. You're gonna always have issues with drivability. And even with this supercharger E85, even if I put cams in here or did anything else, this car should run and drive like normal for the most part. You know what I mean? So understand that when you're tuning these injectors on the car, the entire system works in conjunction. There's a difference between closed loop and open loop. Closed loop is when the car is running on the fuel trims based on what the oxygen sensors detect. So when the oxygen sensors detect a certain value, they're looking for about 14.7, and they will, basically it forms like a sine wave. It will float in that area. So it's gonna always float in that area. It's not going to really deviate unless you make some tune changes to make it lean one side to the other, either on the rich side or the leaner side. And the Higos will camp out. Higos being heated exhaust, you know, gas oxygen sensors. So all in all on here, the vehicle's working great. If I put it in open loop, the mass airflow is dialed in already for accurate volumetric efficiency calculations. So because this doesn't have a map sensor or you know manifold and air pressure sensor, it doesn't need that. It infers the value of load based on the mass airflow, and that's how it calculates its load based on the airflow coming into the engine. So all of those things relate and make the car run good overall. That's why I can still get supercharger and run 21 miles to the gallon out of a tank of fuel on E85 in here and keep her on the highway and keep her running great. There's so many things you can do. Injector tuning is not that hard. I just want you guys to be able to realize that getting your new injectors dialed in, getting with your tuner, if you don't dial them in, is very important. With that said, don't forget to smash that like button. Don't forget to click the bell for notifications. And here's just one of many updates all the time in the Tuning Your Mustang series. I'll just be talking about some things, showing some examples, and going over other stuff. Leave in the comment section below any info that you want me to know, any questions. We always need that. We want to be able to make the best content possible. And I can't do this content without you guys, the audience. So definitely don't forget to share it out there. I appreciate you guys, and hey, I'll be back.